Alright, guys, we're going to pick up on our next lesson here, which is going to be Europeans. And this is going to be like the most condensed European history that you can get, so that we can kind of show how things that were going on in Europe created a environment that led to European exploration and the quote-unquote discovery of America by Europeans. All right. So what I want to do here is I want to start by talking about European society with the Middle Ages into the Crusades and into the Renaissance, and then finally into European exploration. All right. So just to make sure that we're all on the same page here, the Crusades were holy wars called for by the Pope in 1095. All right. These Crusades are going to be crucial for Europeans' desire to find water routes to Asia, because these Crusades are going to introduce Europeans to Asian goods, and they're going to be looking for ways to get to the Asian markets to get those goods. All right. So Crusades, the Crusade, anytime you have conflict in the ancient world, especially between two groups of people that came from different places, the soldiers that fight in these wars are introduced to new things that they've never seen before. Okay? So if the Crusades take place in the Middle East, for example, and you've got fighters coming to the Middle East from Europe, and you've got fighters coming to the Middle East from all over the world, they're going to be introduced to goods and spices and clothes and materials like silk that they've never seen before. And then they go back to their homes with those spices and silks and things that they've never had before, and it creates a demand for all these things. Okay. But backing up before the Crusades, okay, the collapse of the Roman Empire and the chaos that followed was known as the Middle Ages. Now, this actually happened before AD 500, but basically that period between AD 500 and AD 1400 is the Middle Ages. Okay, and during that time, people really started to lean on the church for stability. Thus, the Crusades being something that united Europeans together. They were all fighting for the Christian faith. Okay. Let me back up here for a second. Yeah. So again, I said the church provided stability and order in Europe, and people who disobeyed the church faced excommunication. All right. So the Crusades changed Western Europe by introducing Muslim and Byzantine culture and goods, right? And like we said, these Europeans wanted to find markets for those goods. Now, things were good in the 1200s because there was the empire that controlled those trade routes between Europe and Asia was called the Mongol Empire. And they were friendly to traders. They were friendly to people coming through and trading goods back and forth. Okay? When the Mongol Empire, when they fall, Europeans are going to start looking for different trade routes to Asia, because the trade routes that used to be controlled by the Mongol Empire are now controlled by hostile Muslim empires who they had been fighting against since the times of the Crusades. Does that make sense? So you have Christians and Muslims fighting against each other during the Crusades. Then you have a friendly empire that controlled trade routes between Europe and Asia that falls, and now those trade routes are controlled by Muslim empires who've been fighting against European Christians. So obviously these European Christians were looking for new trade routes to Asian markets, all right? Which we just said right there. All right. The next thing that we need to talk about is the Renaissance. So whereas we have the fall of the Roman Empire and the Middle Ages, right? People look to the church for stability. The church calls for crusades to fight against Islamic empires, which they see as pushing into their territories and not allowing Christians to go on pilgrimages to holy places, okay? Which created a desire for Asian goods and Asian spices and Asian materials. And then the trade routes are controlled by Muslims, right? So now we're looking for water routes to Asia around the same time that the Renaissance becomes a movement in Europe. Okay, and the Renaissance was a renewed interest in classical art, architecture, literature, learning, renewed scientific um, discoveries, technological advances. All right, so at the very same time that you have Europeans looking for water routes to Asia, you also have a cultural movement that is creating new technologies, right? So what kind of new technologies are they creating? The invention of new technology made the long-distance marine travel possible. Marine meaning traveling in the water. All right, so we have the astrolabe, we have lateen sails, and we have the caravel. All right, what are these things? I think you all know what a compass is, but most of you don't know what an astrolabe is. And many Europeans didn't have access to compasses. But an astrolabe is a device where you can look at the position of stars to determine your location and the direction you're traveling. All right. Lateen sails are sails that help you not only sail typical sails, like if you just put up a sail on a boat, you're only going to sail in one direction, and that's the direction that the wind is blowing. But lateen sails are sails that help you sail across the wind, okay? And then the caravel was a new type of ship with a shallow hull that allowed ships to sail into narrow inlets and help them explore. All right, so these new inventions are, which are products of the Renaissance, are allowing Europeans to now travel and search for new water routes to Asian markets. Okay. Few people of note that we need to know about. Henry the Navigator from Portugal, and I know I bounce around a lot when I talk, but at least I'm talking to you, right? Henry the Navigator from Portugal. Portugal led the way. Portugal is a country next to Spain in Europe, and they are the front runners when it comes to naval exploration. Okay, they're the front runners when it comes to traveling across the water and looking for new things and exploring and looking for new water routes to Asia and making discoveries. Portugal leads the way, all right? And Henry the Navigator from Portugal set up a school to teach people how to do that, all right? Two other Portuguese explorers are Bartholomew Diaz, who reached the southern tip of Africa in 1488, and Vasco da Gama, who found a water route to Asia, going from Portugal around Africa and across the Indian Ocean to India. Okay. So let me bring up real quick the Diaz and da Gama water routes. All right, so let's find a decent map here that will differentiate between the two. Maybe this one. Yeah, perfect. All right, now I don't know if you can see this map or not, but the red line here is Bartholomew Diaz hugging the coast of Africa and then reaching the southern tip of Africa, known as the Cape of Good Hope, proving that you could sail around Africa to get to Asian markets. Okay? And then Vasco da Gama followed that same route and then continued further in 1498, getting to India and reaching some of these markets that Europeans wanted to get to. Okay. All right. I'm sure that was a train wreck, but hopefully it gives you an idea of how this is, and this is important because this is one of your objectives for the Alabama course of study. All right. You need to know how the Crusades and the Renaissance led to European exploration and therefore the discovery of the Americas. All right. And the whole deal here is that the Crusades introduced Europeans to Asian markets, and then the Renaissance armed them with the technology that they needed to bypass Islamic empires that controlled the trade routes over land, and then they searched for water routes to get to Asian markets. Now, Portugal finds the eastern water route to the Asian markets. As we're going to find out in our next lesson, Spain is going to sail west from Europe to look for a water route to Asia. All right. Hope y'all are having a good day.